Well, we can clear a space for you afterwards, Margaret, if you're keen to see. Yeah, nice to see you. Forgive the fact that Kieran has no shoes on. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being willing to change up plans given the weather, but fantastic to be in the Wairarapa today. This is a place that has benefited from the significant investment that we as a government have put into regional economic development. When we took office, our view was that our regions had suffered from consistent lack of investment and that if we wanted to grow our economy, we needed to start with our regions. We've done that through a range of initiatives. The Provincial Growth Fund has been one initiative, so has our investment and changed investment through nzherald, also the New Zealand upgrade, and of course our response to COVID, which has seen a number of community-based projects funded as well. It has meant that we have been the government of infrastructure and we have been, in my mind, the government of the regions. Though for today, we're announcing Labour's policy for regional economic development going forward, and for that I'll ask our Economic Development and Regional Economic Development spokesperson Phil Twyford to give you an introduction to the policy. Then we'll be happy to take questions, and I do want to acknowledge Dame Margaret, who is here and is involved in economic development locally, and she may, after we give some comments, if you're interested in talking to someone from that perspective, we'll hand over at that point. Phil.
Thank you, Prime Minister. So today we're announcing a Regional Partnerships Fund as Labour's campaign pledge on regional economic development. It's an initial $200 million seed fund designed to support regional economic development strategies. And as the Prime Minister said, we're exceptionally proud of the work that's been done with the PGF over the last 3 years. It's been a groundbreaking initiative, one of the biggest funds in the OECD and perhaps anywhere internationally for the support of regional economic development. Our policy going into the next 3 years has two qualities that I want to underline. So the first is that we will take a more focused approach to link up central government support for regional economic development with strategies that are developed in the regions by economic development agencies, councils and other economic leaders in the regions. And there are some fantastic strategies that have been developed over the last few years. The Tai Potini strategy in the West Coast is an example. But all over the country, regional economic leaders have been developing strategies designed to boost productivity and increase well-being and generate sustainable growth in the regions. And so we'll be working more closely with those strategies. The other thing that we are going to do with our regional economic development policy is link it more tightly with our industry policy, which is designed to grow productivity, targeting particular sectors like agri-tech, where New Zealand has a strong competitive advantage internationally, but we've never really realised the potential of technology in agriculture. Another one is in the digital sector, where we've got a fast-growing high-tech industry, more than $1 billion plus in revenue every year. We want to grow that, and we want to grow large New Zealand firms that can take on global markets. Another one is another good example is in Canterbury, where there's a really vibrant, advanced specialist manufacturing sector with a lot of great New Zealand firms who are doing high-value, high-tech R&D and exporting it to the world. So our regional economic development strategy will link up with those sunrise industries. Another example is in the Bay of Plenty, where horticulture and robotics and the automation of things like asparagus pickers or kiwi fruit harvesting is a rapidly growing sector there. So those are the two key elements of the plan. But as the Prime Minister said, it also links up with what we're doing in infrastructure and transport. We've got a $14 billion infrastructure program that embraces transport, state housing, schools, hospitals. There's the $3 billion shovel-ready infrastructure program that we announced earlier this year, and we take a regional lens to all of that investment. So I'll leave that there.
Thank you. Thank you, Phil. As you can see, today we are making a commitment for ongoing regional economic development. PGF funding will continue as the projects that have been funded complete their course, and so we envision that will take some years to come. But we are starting now to pivot and move into a form of investment that will support existing regional economic development strategies. So the investment will be there, we're just delivering it in a different way, in a way that is directly partnered with those opportunities that our regional economic development agencies are identifying and partnering with them to deliver on them. But look, happy to answer questions. Well, obviously the PGF investment will continue for some time. What we're saying is that if the PGF has taught us how important that investment into our regional economies is, we will continue that, but we will do it differently.
What about the perception of the Provincial Growth Fund, that it was just a bit of a slush fund?
No, I think that initial burst of support into our regional economies has been incredibly important, and I see the ongoing impact of those initiatives even now as I travel across the country. But in the next phase, our view is that now's then the time to partner with those regional economic development agencies, some of which have been funded to develop plans by the work we've done in the last 3 years, and help them deliver the strategies they've identified going forward.
But you could have another $1 billion a year until Provincial Growth.
Sorry, what was that?
You could have another $1 billion a year.
The PGF was only ever designed to be a $3 billion project over 3 years. Now that it's coming to its completion, our view is that going forward, we need to keep investing in our regional economies. We want to do it in partnership with the local economic development agencies. That's how we can drive initiatives that locally will make the biggest difference.
What do you think of National's tax cuts?
Look, my view is now is simply not the time. What they have announced today is unaffordable and is raiding from a fund that has to be available to make sure that we as a nation can keep responding to the challenge of COVID, not deliver unaffordable tax cuts.
I think it's irresponsible as well. What this will mean is that the money that's needed to fund our hospitals and our schools is compromised. It simply doesn't add up. There is no way that they will be able to meet even the basic costs of funding DHBs or funding our primary schools with the amount of money they've left themselves here. It feels a bit like to me it's been done on the fly. This is not the actions of a responsible party.
Do you think it's an election bribe?
Well, I just think it's clearly been done in a desperate way, and I think New Zealanders know that what we need at the moment is stability and consistency and a plan that will create jobs and support people through this. That is not what National have proposed.
Sorry?
Is it reckless?
Well, I think it's
Yes.
I think it's totally irresponsible at this time where we need to be making sure that we're investing in our services, that we do have a fund available as we continue to manage COVID. They are raiding that for tax cuts. That's just not right, and it is not the actions of a responsible party, let alone a responsible economic manager.
You're just jumping up and down there because you're scared this will win the Nats votes.
No, I absolutely back our plan because it is already making a difference to New Zealanders. It's already making a difference to our recovery. For me, I'm just going to call this what it is. I don't think it's responsible, and I don't think it's the right time for an initiative like this. We just can't afford it.
Judith Collins originally had said there would not be tax cuts. There was also a 30% debt plan.
Yeah.
When do you think it changed?
Well, that would be a question for the National Party, but obviously quite a dramatic change to see a change in debt target and also the addition of tax cuts in what I believe is the last 3 to 4 weeks. And so ultimately that's a question for the National Party. Our view is what we need now is really careful economic management. We need certainty and we need a plan, and that is what we've delivered and will continue to deliver if we're returned.
On the PGF, looking back in retrospect, was it a bit blunt, a little bit untargeted, maybe too central government led? I mean, if you compare it to the plan you have now.
Well, I think, just if I may, one thing to keep in mind is that at the time it was introduced, we had not seen that scale of investment at a local level ever. So the idea that you would have pre-planned economic development plans to the scale we needed, I think probably wouldn't be fair to some of our regions, because there just hadn't been that investment and partnership with central government. What the PGF has enabled us to do is really simulate that work to be done. And local government in particular can see now that there's a partnership and an opportunity. A lot of work has been done, and now it presents an opportunity for us collectively going forward.
One of the things that the National Party says that it will...
But, sorry, Phil, do you want to say, have you got something further on that?
Yeah, I think it's true that that no government in New Zealand for decades has attempted something like the PGF. And it has stimulated local government and communities, Māori organisations, iwi, all around New Zealand. There's been a huge upswelling of local regional economic development activity. And that's great, and we want to build on that. The other thing is that one of the things that's been achieved in the last 3 years is from scratch the building of a really significant capability within central government in MB, the Provincial Development Unit. A really impressive machinery to run this program, to work with communities, EDAs, councils, and we're going to retain that capacity. We're going to fine-tune it and refocus the program a bit.
How much of the $3 billion is left unallocated at this point?
It's a reasonably small amount at this stage. There are one or two areas where sector plans have been made, but specific projects haven't yet been agreed, and you will have noted in our policy statement we said we will take a look at those, but the vast bulk of it has at least been allocated. And just to back up what both the Prime Minister and Phil have said, it's natural when you do something that hasn't been done for decades and decades in New Zealand that you'll learn as you go. And one of the things we have learned as we've gone through this is the importance of getting alongside the regions. And I think about a region like Wairarapa here and the tremendous work that people like Dame Margaret Baisley and others have done to create coherent economic development plans. We now want to get alongside regions all over New Zealand and be strategic about our investments. Huge difference made by the PGF. This is the next stage.
Winston Peters has said he's adamant the PGF will be back after the election. What if this becomes a bottom line for New Zealand First?
Oh, that's a matter for them. We're campaigning on our plan going forward, which is about continuing to invest in our regions, but doing it in a strategic way.
He's also said that Labour never cared about the regions. What's your response to that?
Obviously, I disagree with that.
Do you think New Zealand First will be back after the election?
Obviously, that's going to come down to voters.
Speaking of campaigning, are you hoping you might be able to win this seat off Bishop?
Yes, but the reason that I'm confident is because of the work that Kieran has put into this seat. I've had people today come up to me and spontaneously just say to me, look, Kieran's earned it. And that's what it's been about for us. We never take anything for granted. We assume nothing. We just work hard and try and earn that support.
Economists have told us that the shovel-ready projects won't help with thousands of women out of work. What will you do specifically to help women recover from COVID job losses?
Well, firstly, we've only seen in the last few days, for instance, our announcement of bringing back that training incentive allowance, which we know has in the past made a huge difference to sole parents, supporting them with the costs of, for instance, childcare, while they go into training and education that can help with support for work in the future. Equally, we've got initiatives that we have specifically invested in, knowing that they're more likely to be jobs that those juggling care may also take up, like, for instance, lunches in schools. That's potentially creating 2,000 jobs, and those have, in the past, often been taken up by women.
There's been more of a focus on those sort of construction and infrastructure projects.
Well, look, I'm never going to assume that projects around the trades are not for women too. In fact, we've seen an 8% increase in women going into those apprenticeships. We need to keep driving that. These are high-skilled, high-wage jobs that have good prospects attached to them. Why shouldn't our women take up those opportunities?
So do you have a specific plan then to get more women into trades and into those jobs?
Well, we have been working with the trades industry training organisations in particular around showcasing and making sure that they're doing their bit to advertise, to reach out and encourage more women into the trades. And we have seen the beginnings of the benefit of that. We've just got to do more of it.
Just an idea of potential bespoke quarantine for sports teams in Queenstown. How confident are you that public health and safety can be maintained given that area had previously been ruled out for isolation?
Yeah, look, we would only do any kind of managed isolation or quarantine facility if we were absolutely convinced that it was safe. What we have to do when we're thinking about preparing a new facility is work with the local district health board to make sure that they've got the facilities and the staff that they need when you look at the actual venue itself and make sure it's secure. And so those conversations have been going on with Queenstown and with the Southern District Health Board. As it happens, for the Wallabies, we're looking at using an existing facility, and if teams are coming one by one, we can actually manage that way, but we're still looking at the possibility of a bespoke facility.
And what progress is being made in terms of getting that ready in time for summer sport?
Yeah, as I say, we're still working on that, but we are managing the discussions we're having at the moment with netball and cricket and so on in such a way that I think we can probably manage it within the facilities we have, but we'll keep those discussions going.
And will there be sort of the amount of COVID rates in the country play a role in whether certain teams are even allowed in?
Oh, well, it's more about the risk assessment for people in managed isolation and quarantine, and that was the very issue around the Rugby Championship, was obviously with Australia we can have a degree of confidence about the team that's coming over and where they've been in recent times. If we look at Argentina and South Africa, you both had countries where COVID was considerably more prevalent, and in the case of the Argentinian team, was prevalent in the team. So, we have to look at those risk profiles for each country as they come.
Dr. Shane Retty has said that becoming the National Party leader would be a privilege. Does Judith Collins need to watch her back?
Oh, look, that's obviously a matter for the National Party. Yes, I'll leave it there.
On COVID, Prime Minister, the primary school student in South Auckland who went to school while waiting for a test, it seemed like the Ministry of Health knew about it as a current case, not a current case, a likely case. Why were they not put in the quarantine facility?
Yeah.
Why were they able to go to school?
Yes, my understanding is that they had been. So yesterday was when I last got my brief on that, and it seems that there just were some issues around understanding the length of isolation required for the family and some issues around that. So I'd want to get an update on the brief, but that was the information I got yesterday.
So were the family not told how long they had to stay, or would the Ministry of Health screw up another way, or what happened?
No, my understanding is that there are some English as second language issues there, some issues around their understanding of the length of isolation required, but my understanding is also that family members had been in quarantine as well.
In terms of supports for women, is that aspirational message that you can become an electrician, is that enough based on the scale of the problem, or does there need to be more targeted long-term supports for women finding themselves out of work in COVID-19?
Firstly, actually, some of the job seeker data at the moment is telling us that despite many of the assumptions that are being made, they are not the majority that are coming on to job seeker. Now, I don't take that as the single guide, though, because there will be those who won't be opting. That's not the best way to measure. Many will be opting out, for instance, or not necessarily making the approach to work and income. But at the moment, it is more heavily weighted to males entering onto job seeker. No, it's not enough just to market. We have very specifically thought about what are the kinds of investments that we should be making to try and support and ensure that the jobs we're creating are available both in those areas that have been predominantly perceived as male versus female. I take nothing for granted, though, and that's the point I want to make here, though, is that we should never assume that just because we've traditionally had a workforce that's been dominated by males, that we shouldn't look to how we can attract more women into that workforce. So it will be more than marketing. It's actually seeing yourself in those roles, showcasing more often that they are available and that there are women entering into those workforces. So that is a big part of it. In fact, when you talk, and as I have, when I was last up at Auckland, in South Auckland, two of the trainees there, two young women, they said the reason they went in was because they knew people who had themselves, and that does make a difference.
Go
ahead, Phil.
So there's one very practical thing that we've just done recently. We've changed the government procurement rules that govern how public sector agencies spend about $42 billion a year on buying goods and services. And the new rule that we've added tells government agencies to look at how, whenever they're buying goods and services, commissioning a new building or contracting some kind of service, that they should look at how they can provide job opportunities for people who have been displaced by COVID-19, with particular attention to groups that are disadvantaged in the workforce. And that may in some sectors be women. It could also be older workers, younger workers, people with disabilities.
And one more, that's 20, so broadly speaking, our infrastructure investment's looking to generate about 20,000 jobs. Our jobs for the environment is around 11,000. I'm already hearing that in different parts of the country we're seeing those who have been in tourism, and we do of course have a large number of women employed in those sectors, are going into those roles, and so there are opportunities there of course.
Justin, I'm sure you'd be glad you asked this, because I also will add to that the flexi wage policy includes a specific ring fencing of funding for people to start their own businesses, which we know is something that again is available to everybody and will be particularly attractive to people coming out of a sector like tourism or retail. And within the free trades training, it's not just the heavy industries, which, as we have said, are equally available for women, but it's also community care, elder
mental
care,
health.
mental health care.
Yep.
So, as you can tell, there's a wide range of responses to this.
Is it hard to fight?
Fulsome, might say, someone might say.
Is it hard to fight an election where you are proposing to raise taxes and National is proposing to cut them?
No, because I think ultimately voters will look at this time and say what's right for New Zealand right now. Now, our view is we want to maintain high quality health and education services. We want to make sure that we have a bit available to keep getting us through COVID, support our small businesses, support our job creators. Now is just not the time for tax cuts. And I genuinely believe New Zealanders will look at the environment right now and agree with that.
$3,000 in your back pocket is a
Yeah, but actually, I think if you ask New Zealanders right now, what are they worried about? They're worried about whether or not their kids are going to have a job, whether their kids are going to be in school, whether they can have the health services they need. Now, our plan around COVID and our response going forward is all about generating opportunities for the future. We can only do that with a plan like ours rather than, unfortunately, an irresponsible plan that doesn't think to the future.
So Nationals promised not to cut health or education or those core services. Do you not buy that?
I have not yet seen any proof in the economic plan that actually shows how they are going to do that.
The level of allowances that they are proposing will not be able to meet the need in health and in education. If you just look at this year's budget, we had to put the best part of $900 million into our district health boards to keep them going, to keep up with population growth and an ageing population. They don't even have that much available in the next budget.
They've also promised $31 billion extra in transport spending, with no explanation of how they're going to pay for it.
So you've got the greatest hits here today. I'm going to finish with one last question.
Restaurant Association, it's calling on the government.
Sorry, what was that?
The Restaurant Association is calling on the government to provide a specific rent subsidy to businesses stuck in leases that they can't afford to pay. What's your reaction to that?
Obviously we've had good debate and discussion around what we can do to support businesses where they have been in relationships that haven't always been balanced and fair-minded. There are some who, of course, have agreements that mean that there will be a more equitable 50-50 split in these times. What we've tried to do is create an arbitration situation that enable those businesses to come to a fair and reasonable agreement with their landlords.
Yeah, we're hearing of some landlords who are offering a 6-month relief if tenants lock into a 5-year lease. What sort of advice can you give to businesses?
Yeah, and obviously what we would really encourage businesses in those situations is seek good advice. We have supported local economic development agencies and chambers to support businesses with questions around planning for the future. We accept that these are, really tough times for businesses. We're trying to create as much relief as we can. I think actually we need to ask landlords to be as supportive as they can in these times as well. All right, I said I was wrapping. Yeah. If anyone wants to have a chat today, Margaret, she's here as well. There you are.